Good morning, everybody. Good morning, and welcome to our presentation for today. My name is Ashley Sanders, and I am facilitating this along with our presenter this morning, Jennifer Scouse. So I am so happy to have you with us this morning to not only receive this great information, but also to be able to ask any pending questions that you have had previously or any questions that may come to mind today. So, without further ado, I would love to introduce Miss Jennifer and allow her to share more about her organization and also be able to present this information to you all.
Great. Thank you so much, Ashley. Thanks to everyone who has joined us this morning, or thanks to anyone that's watching the recording on YouTube. I really appreciate the opportunity here to present with the Eastern Michigan Apex Accelerator. Those are fantastic organizations for companies that are just starting out in federal contracting. Again, my name is Jennifer Schaus. I am based in Washington, D.C., and we've got a little bit of content to get to today on GSA schedules. So again, thanks everybody for registering. Okay, we put together a short agenda here to give you a little bit of background about me and my organization, and then we'll dig into the nitty-gritty details of the GSA schedule. And we'll leave questions at the end. However, at the end of each of these segments, I will pause and see if Ashley has seen any questions that have come in. So as you have questions, please ask them. Just type them in and we'll take them in the order that they are received. If your question is going to be pertaining to something I've yet to cover, I'll just probably save that until we get to that section. And that's it. So we've got 2 hours together today, and we'll go ahead and dig in here. So a little bit of background about myself. I've been in federal contracting for 20 plus years, meaning that I've worked for companies that were selling to the government, including Dun& Bradstreet back in 1998. So a very long time ago. Dun& Bradstreet, the DUNS number was actually used before what is currently used in SAM.gov, which is the UEI number. But Dun& Bradstreet also compiles credit information on businesses and financial data. And so we were selling that as a subscription service to basically all of the federal departments and agencies. At that time, the Dun& Bradstreet office was pretty small. We did hold a GSA schedule, and that's really where I learned a little bit about federal contracting. From there, I worked for some other companies that were not as large or publicly traded like Dun& Bradstreet was at that time. But I sold anything from data to physical security products to the federal government. As I mentioned, we are based in DC, and we've got more or less, I'll say, two kind of services that we provide or that we sell. One, we have amassed a pretty large newsletter of about over 30,000 subscribers, most of which are government contractors. It doesn't cost you anything to sign up for our newsletter. It comes out every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern. And there's information in there about webinars, events, educational information for contractors, as well as news. But there are advertising options as well. So typically for banks, law firms, payroll companies, human resources, platforms, data aggregators, these are good opportunities to get in front of contractors. We also have in-person events, typically here in Washington, D.C. at the John F. Kennedy Center, which is our performing arts venue. We host events about 4 times a year. What's more relevant probably to anyone that's on this webinar live or watching the recording are the services that we provide for federal contractors. So we help companies get onto the GSA schedule by providing everything from the compliance matrix to the proposal submission through to the contract negotiations and the award. And we'll talk about that in detail today. And then some of the other services that we provide are listed here on the screen. They're also on our website under the About Us. Our YouTube channel has almost 700 now videos that are all also complimentary as our newsletter is. And if you're not already subscribed to our channel, please click on subscribe. It doesn't cost anything. Leave us a comment or like any of our videos. It's always good to get feedback and hear from the audience. Okay, so as I mentioned in the agenda, we're going to start with kind of the GSA basics, the who, what, and why. And so, first of all, who is GSA? General Services Administration. They're not appropriated, meaning that they do not receive taxpayer funding. Um, and so, how do they get there? How are they funded? How do they pay their employees? They are self funded through two avenues. One is through what's called GSA PBS. This is their public building service, and GSA is uh, through this the we'll say largest real estate or landlord for the federal government. Um, and so they are charging the federal agencies fees for managing their properties. The other stream of revenue for GSA is through the GSA schedule holders. So every quarter or every month, depending upon how your schedule is negotiated and set up with GSA, is through the quarterly fee of the industrial funding fee. This is 0.75% of your GSA schedule sales. So if you sell nothing through your schedule, you owe GSA nothing. If you sell, $5 million through your schedule, then you'll owe 0.75% to GSA, and that's how they get their funding. We'll talk about why that's important a little bit, why GSA is a little bit more motivated to work with large businesses versus small, because large businesses are typically going to be doing more revenue through the schedule. So just keep that in mind. Um, as far as looking at GSA in more detail, again, I mentioned PBS, that's the Public Building Service. And then through the acquisition service, GSA manages this award program, the schedules, which is what we're going to talk about today. But it's also important that you know that there is also another office, which is their technology transformation services. And so GSA manages the data and the websites on SAM.gov and the other sites that I've got listed here, as well as many others. Um, so just know that GSA is kind of the backbone there. Okay, so what we are talking about today is related to the FAS portion of GSA. Uh, GSA in the past, just for some context and some history for anyone that's kind of been around GSA for a while, GSA, there was the GSA schedule, and then you had, I'll call them kind of sub schedules underneath the main schedule. So people would say, oh, they'd call us and say, can you help us get onto GSA IT schedule 70? Or can you help us get onto the GSA MOBIS schedule? MOBIS was some of the SIN numbers began with 874. And it was related to, it was an acronym for Mission Oriented Business Information Services. Or they would say, can you help us get onto GSA AIMS? AIMS also was an acronym, AIMS. The SIN numbers began with 541. AIMS, AIMS stood for Advertising and Integrated Marketing Services. These and these were just examples. These all fell under the GSA multiple award schedule. What's happened over the last several years is that GSA has consolidated all of these kind of sub schedules into just one multiple award schedule. So now everybody is simply applying or responding to the solicitation, submitting a proposal to get listed on GSA. And then what will differentiate you are the special item numbers underneath those, but we'll talk about that in more detail. So multiple award schedule, it means that there are multiple companies that have this GSA schedule award. And the award is basically just you're on a vendor short list. There's about 18,000 companies, 18 to 20,000 that are listed on the GSA schedule. And the schedule is, as I've got listed here, an open and rolling RFP. So it is a solicitation that you'll find on SAM.gov. The solicitation number is listed there in the second bullet on the right-hand side in blue. The refresh numbers that you'll see right now, they're on refresh number 20. Those are just updates to the solicitation. So GSA may add a requirement, they may add a new form that you need to fill out. Something may change in various regulations that will affect the schedule. And again, the requirements. So you want to make sure that you are staying abreast of these updates, because if you're responding to an old refresh number, you could be missing something pertinent to the schedule requirements. And when you submit your proposal, it potentially might be rejected because you are submitting against an old or expired solicitation. Now there is no due date. What happens is that these refresh numbers keep changing whenever there is an update. So again, just make sure that you are staying abreast of those and you know which number they're on now. As I mentioned, there was an update in April, and so the refresh number is currently at number 20. As I mentioned, there's multiple vendors, thousands of vendors on the schedule, and the GSA schedule represents about billions of dollars worth of opportunities. It doesn't mean that because you're on the schedule that you're even going to get a penny. You still have to compete for the various contract opportunities through the schedule. This schedule is segmented for anyone that's selling products, services, or software, and these items typically need to be available commercially. The schedule, who can purchase off of the schedule? All of the U.S. federal government, plus some quasi-government entities, for example, the UN, the Red Cross, the World Bank, the IMF, the IFC, the IADB, and some of the state, local, and education market. You just need to check to ensure that if you are selling to state and local or any education or universities, that they do have that ability. Again, you can check the schedule to find out what particular states, counties, local governments do have that kind of built in. I will give you two examples. California has something called CMAS. So it's the letter C and then MAS. It stands for California Multiple Award Schedule. And they do have basically the ability to, I'll say, somewhat grandfather in your GSA schedule. There is obviously some paperwork involved, but that is an option. In addition to that, Texas has TexMass, so that's Texas Multiple Award Schedule, and same thing, they can, through some paperwork, grandfather in some of your GSA schedule. Just mentioning that in case anybody here is diversifying and selling across federal as well as state and local. As I mentioned, the schedule is a vendor shortlist, so it's just means that you have jumped through the hoops to get you understand how to read a solicitation and you meet the basic requirements of GSA. There is no contract award dollars. You're going to need to then compete for the various solicitations that come out through the schedule. There is absolutely no requirement to be on the schedule. So if somebody is calling you and trying to encourage you to get onto the schedule because they're trying to sell this to you, you probably want to pause and do some due diligence, A, on the company, and B, just to ensure that your prospects prefer to purchase through the schedule. And that can be done just by a simple conversation with the people that you're talking to within the government that want to buy your product, service, or software. The way the schedule is organized, as I mentioned in the past, there were kind of these sub-schedules. But again, now everybody is on the GSA schedule. And the way that you're differentiated is by your special item number or your SIN number. And SIN numbers sometimes will be very similar, or sometimes in some cases exact, as your NAICS code, your North American Industry Classification System, which is the digit that 6 digits that typically identify what it is you're selling. And there's about over 300 SIN numbers. I think that's on the next slide. We'll dig into that a little bit further. Why would somebody want to get onto the schedule? And we're going to talk about all of these in more detail, but it allows the government to purchase from you knowing that your prices have been vetted and that you do have past performance, you do have the technical capabilities, and therefore they don't need to shop around for 3 quotes because that has been done. That due diligence by the government has been done on the upfront side. And again, if anybody has questions, please feel free to type them in. And as we get to the end of each of these sections, I'll stop and see if we have anything that pertains to that section. So as I mentioned, the GSA schedule, in order to be on this vendor shortlist, you need to respond to the solicitation. If you hop over to sam.gov, just as you would find any other solicitation, you'll find the GSA schedule solicitation listed there. And if you follow it, which is the icon there, I'm not sure if you guys could see my cursor in the right hand, middle of the right hand page of your screen, this will allow you to stay abreast of the various refreshes or updates for the schedule. Okay, so in more detail, as far as it is a contract, and contracts have terms and conditions. So it's initially, as you get your GSA schedule award, you're basically good, quote unquote, for 5 years. At the end of each of these 5-year periods, there are renewal periods. So there are 4 total 5-year periods, so this makes this a 20-year contract if you meet the terms and conditions. One of the most important ones is meeting a sales quota, which is $100,000 for the first 5 years. And then for the subsequent 5-year periods, you've got to bring in at least 125K. If you do the math and add it up, it comes up to 475,000 for the life of the contract. I would say if that's what you're hoping to do in 20 years, then the schedule is probably not for you. Or if you're just hoping to do 100K within 5 years, again, this is not the vehicle for you. The reason is that the GSA schedule is predicated on your lowest prices. So your margins are going to be very slim, and at 100K, you're probably just staying afloat, if that, in a 5-year period. So some pieces here on pricing, and I've got a couple slides that really get to the details of pricing, and we'll talk about those in more detail a little bit further along in today's presentation. But again, the biggest piece of the schedule is pricing. So you'll need to make some pricing disclosures in your proposal submission. And GSA's goal, as I've got here, is to secure equal to or better than your MFC. MFC is your most favored customer, meaning the customer that you give your best discounts to on a regular or standard basis. Once you are awarded a schedule, your GSA rates are a not to exceed or a price ceiling, meaning that as you're bidding for work through your schedule, you cannot bid at rates that are higher than your schedule. You're actually encouraged to give discounts. However, outside of your schedule, you cannot go lower, but you can go higher. And that may sound confusing. Now I've got a visual slide a little further along that will make this a little bit easier to understand. As I mentioned, GSA is a non-appropriated agency, meaning they are not funded by taxpayer dollars. They are self-funded. And GSA's funding for this particular segment of GSA is through the IFF, or the industrial funding fee. Again, that's 0.75%, so a little bit less than 1% only of your GSA schedule sales. You pay this to GSA, but it's pretty much a wash because this fee is built into your GSA prices. The customer, let's say you're selling to Department of Commerce, Department of Commerce will pay you basically your GSA rate plus the 0.75%. You collect that, you keep your portion, you extract then that 0.75% and pay it to GSA either on a monthly or quarterly basis, depending upon how you are set up with GSA on the transactional data reporting system. Okay, let's go ahead and move on because, as I mentioned, GSA is not required. It is simply an option for how the government can purchase from you or others. And so, what are the other options? Because GSA is typically only used about 10 to 15% of the time. On average, we'll say 12%, but this will vary for your specific product, service, or software. And so this is where you need to use public data or any of the data aggregators that are out there, and there are plenty, to determine exactly how much of what it is that you sell, whether you're selling products, physical products, a software service, software as a service, or professional services, whether it's IT, janitorial, whatever it is. You it's very easy to find out through some research how much is specifically going through the schedule versus how much is going through full and open competition, how much is going through set asides, or some of the other um, options that I have listed here. So don't think that GSA is the only game in town. They do a fantastic job of marketing themselves, but they are not the only way that the government purchases. So before you decide to get onto the schedule and either spend money with us or do it yourself and pull out your hair or give yourself premature gray hair, make sure that this is how your customer prefers to purchase. Um, there's also department and agency contract vehicles. For example, NASA SOUP, Navy Seaport E. There's an Army contract called ITES, and the lists go on and on and on. Most departments have their own contract vehicles. So, again, upon further research and investigation, and just part of your capture process, you should be pulling this data together to ensure that this is in your best interest. As I mentioned, there are other department and agency contract vehicles, some of which I mentioned. So this is where doing your homework or simple research through either data aggregators or using any of the public websites, any of the .gov sites that are out there, will serve you well. And so you want to spend the majority of your time researching and then using that data to make educated decisions based on data and facts. Okay, I'm going to pause here, take a sip of my coffee, and see if any questions have come in. These are kind of high level, just bullet points that I wanted to hit, uh, as this presentation is more or less geared for companies that are perhaps scratching their head, wondering if they should be getting onto the schedule. So Ashley, has anything come in, or should I keep on rolling?
We do have two questions. This is Jasmine.
Okay.
One of the questions was, or the first question that came in was, is EIS another example of one of the multiple award schedules you were mentioning?
I'm not sure what EIS is, so I'll have
I'm
to.
not either.
Okay.
So Zach, if you can elaborate on what EIS is. And then the other question is, I think you got this one, is what is the simplified acquisition?
Sure. Let me go back to the slide if I can. Um, so this slide is probably one of my favorite slides that I use in most of my presentations, and these percentages are, we'll say, kind of rough estimates. So Um, again, the point of this slide, the takeaway is GSA is just an option for the government. So don't feel that you don't need this. It's a marketing tool only. So let me go through the list here. Full and open competition is one option for how the government purchases, and probably the most common way that they purchase. Is any of the opportunities that you're going to see on sam.gov that anybody that just started their business and reads the solicitation and meets the requirements can respond to. The next one down is the department and agency vehicles, which I listed on the next slide. Those were, NASA SOUP, Navy Seaport E, DHS Eagle, and so forth. And again, how are you going to get this information? variety of ways. One is from talking to your prospects. What contract vehicles do you guys prefer to use to purchase, insert whatever it is that you're selling? And the other is just by using the data that's out there, the various websites for conducting research, or maybe you're subscribed to a data aggregator. GSA schedules, we've got them in at about 12%, and that could be 3% for what it is you're selling, or it could be 30%. Again, it's going to be, you want to have these answers for your specific product or service. Set-asides, these are going to be women-owned, veteran-owned, hub zone, 8A, and all the other checkboxes that are out there. And that number may actually be a little bit higher than 15%, but again, these are averages. You should be able to do this and have these answers. This should be part of your business plan. Simplified acquisition, these are set-aside contracts for small businesses not to exceed $250,000. If you want more information on simplified acquisitions on our website, so jenniferschaus.com, if you navigate over to the tab called webinars on our website, and you scroll down, there's a variety of topics on government contracting, one of which is simplified acquisitions. We've got a couple webinars there for free on simplified acquisitions. Sole source, exactly what it says. There's only one source of the product, service, or software on the planet, and you're the company that provides it. These are kind of rare. OTAs, other transaction authorities, these are contract actions outside of the FAR, outside of the Federal Acquisition Regulations. These became very popular during COVID as just a more expeditious and quick way to award contracts, and other just other ways that the government could be purchasing that are not listed here. So hopefully that answered the question on just the variety of ways that the government has to purchase. And I'll pause just to see if that incurred any other additional questions.
So Jennifer, we did have, Zach came back and he said that EIS is the Enterprise Infrastructure Services contract. So his original question was, is the Enterprise Infrastructure Services contract another example of one of the multiple award schedules you were mentioning?
EIS, that might be a Army contract, but I'm not possible. I'm not, let me just see here, EIS, hang on one second. Contracts. Yes, it looks like it is part of a GSA contract vehicle. So yes, that would be another one. And I've got a slide. There's GSA has a variety of flavors, GSA Oasis, GSA Vets, and other kind of specialty contracts. So that would be one of those, yes. And hopefully that answered Zach's question.
All right, well, that is, let me see. Oh, okay, so Adam mentioned, he says, I have come across the term simplified acquisition. Where do we come across these types of contract? Are these available on SAM.gov?
Yes, they are. This would be basically how the contracting officer is setting aside the procurement. They're all reserved for small businesses. And again, we've got webinars on simplified acquisitions on our website. So if you navigate to jenniferschaus.com, go to the tab called webinars, and then just scroll down to simplified acquisitions. We probably have 5 or 10 complimentary videos on simplified acquisitions. Okay.
Yeah. And we're good on questions.
All right. Thank you, Jasmine. Okay. So now we're going to talk about GSA advantages and disadvantages. And just to clarify for our discussion today, this is just the basic vanilla GSA multiple award schedule. It's not Oasis. It's not GSA stars. It's not GSA vets. Those are different flavors, either segmented for particular industries or particular set-asides. Okay. So an advantage to being on the schedule, and again, it's not required, but it does show that you're serious about doing business with the government, and that you do know how to read a solicitation, you meet the requirements, and you've been vetted upfront on both your pricing and your technical merit. It can shorten the procurement cycle in that if you are at the point where you've got your prospect ready to purchase, and we're kind of coming into a pretty heavy spending period with the end of the fiscal year coming upon us very soon. Um, and a lot of times the conversation with your potential buyer will be, what contract vehicle are you on? Or, how can I get to you? And often the answer is going to be, hey, I've got a GSA schedule or whatever that a contract vehicle is. So it can help accelerate. And I hate to use the word accelerate in government contracting, but um, uh, just keep that in mind, that it will help just make it easier for the government to purchase from you. Now, once you are on the schedule, there are RFPs, requests for proposals, that you'll be able to see that nobody else will. These are found in the GSA eBuy portal, but the only RFPs you're going to be able to see are the ones that are dedicated just for your specific awarded special item numbers or your SIN numbers. You'll also have less competition because not everybody's going to be able to see or respond to these RFPs, only those with the GSA schedule. This having just a relationship with the government is not going to win you a contract, and having just a GSA schedule is not going to win you a contract. There's a variety of, we'll say, components that come into play as far as what it takes to win a contract. Yes, a relationship. Yes, a mechanism for the government to purchase from you. You'll need the technical merit to meet the terms and conditions and the qualifications for what the government is looking to purchase. So the schedule, in essence, is really just a feather in your cap. It's again, giving you some credibility, showing that you're serious and that you have been vetted. So of the 18 to 20,000 companies that hold schedules, more than half have zero sales through their schedule. So keep that in mind. A lot of companies will get the schedule without really needing it and without having a relationship in place first, or without doing that homework to determine, oh, they should have really been pursuing another contract vehicle, or they should have used the money and time and effort that they allocated towards getting onto the schedule for pursuing simplified acquisitions, or pursuing just full and open competition contracts, or getting on a team or a joint venture, or whatever it is. Some disadvantages to being on the schedule. As I mentioned on the previous slide, yes, there is less competition, but it's more intense. So while you can box out some players that maybe are inexperienced, once you're on the schedule, you're going to be up against some heavy hitters. A good chunk of large businesses you'll find there that are obviously able to provide lower prices. You're also going to be limited by your GSA rates, which again are a price ceiling or a not to exceed. And so you're going to be encouraged to give discounts through your schedule. As I mentioned, you'll still need a relationship, and there is a cost of doing business with or without the schedule. Government contracting, let's just put it out there, is paper intensive, back office and compliance intensive. So there's a lot of reporting that goes with just being a government contractor, and then add on the GSA schedule, additional reporting, and just, terms and conditions to meet. We talked about that sales quota, which is the 100,000 for the first 5 years, and then 125 for the following 3 out years. So you've got a little bit of a monkey on your back, but hopefully the reason you're getting onto the schedule is because you've got a couple opportunities in your pipeline of your prospects asking you to get onto the schedule so they can buy from you quickly. Okay, and I'll just stop there. That was not a lot of content that we went through, but I'm not sure if any more questions came in.
We do have a question about pricing, and I'm not sure if you'll get into that a little bit more later in the presentation, but the question is, please explain more about pricing and same or equal to your MFC. How is that enforced?
Yep, so great question, and we'll get that in. We'll cover that as we talk about pricing, actually in this section with the requirements. So I've broken down the solicitation here for the requirements. And did you say there was also a second question? I'm sorry.
Nope, just that one.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Okay, so GSA and kind of the how-to and the requirements. So as I mentioned, the solicitation number is listed there, and they are on refresh 20 as of today, which is May 21st, 2024. And again, you can find any solicitation on sam.gov, including the GSA schedule. There is no due date. The way that you respond is simply by going onto the GSA e-offer site and submit your proposal in accordance with whatever refresh number they currently are on. There are some, say, different options to getting onto the schedule for companies. That there's the GSA Springboard and the Fast Lane. I'm not going to read the slides to you. And as I mentioned, some of these kind of specialty contracts, Oasis Stars and Vets. Again, what we're talking about today is just the standard vanilla GSA schedule. So the solicitation for this, as are most solicitations, all solicitations broken into administrative, technical, and pricing. And so we'll break these down. Administrative, this will include your cover letter to GSA, your financial statements for the last 2 full fiscal years. So this is balance sheet and income statement for 24 months. Preferably, you don't want to be showing any losses. If so, after you submit your proposal to GSA, you may be contacted by GSA's financial team, and they'll send over what's called the Standard Form SF 527. This is really a bank reference. There is a, let's say a time limit on this. So if they send this to you on Monday, I think they give you 10 days. It might be 2 weeks, but I believe it's 10 calendar days that you need to submit this to your bank and have it completed. And then your bank submits that back to GSA. So keep an eye out for that if there are any irregularities in your financials. And so let's say you're ready to submit your proposal today. What I would suggest is submit your balance sheet and income statement from January through December 2023, as well as January through December 2022, and then submit your year-to-date January through April, or the second week of May 2024, because the GSA will ask for that anyway. If you're really showing major losses, then you probably don't want to submit a proposal to get onto the schedule. You really want to show that your company is healthy, that you've got a couple full-time employees, and that your finances are strong. Because it will take time and effort through sales, business development, attending networking events, attending conferences, just staying educated on GSA, and more to really maintain your schedule. You also will submit what's called the readiness assessment, excuse me, and the pathway to success. These two pieces are GSA test, or we'll call them exams. The readiness assessment, give yourself about a good 2 hours to go through that. There's some great questions on there about how many vendors within your special item number have 0 sales. And you should take this, I would say, as you were deciding to get onto the schedule, because it will open up your eyes to how many companies really do have a goose egg next to their name on the schedule. That is one recommendation from me. The other component here is the pathway to success. This is also a GSA form. It won't take you as long. I would say maybe 30 minutes here to get through the pathway to success. Again, just some basic questions about GSA schedules. You listen to a little recording and then answer the questions. Again, I'd encourage anyone who's considering the schedule to take both of those before you decide to download the solicitation and see if you meet the requirements. Next, so that's the administrative section. Next is the technical section, and this is really just as it suggests that your technical merit. So you'll have a corporate narrative and a quality control narrative. Both of these have very specific questions that GSA has posed, about 6 to 7 questions in each section. So about 12 to 14 questions overall. If your company has a quality control process or documentation, do not submit that. Simply answer the questions that they're asking you. There is a character limit. In the past, there was a page limit. Now there's a character limit just because of the nature of the online form. The corporate narrative is going to ask how long you've been in business, how many full-time employees you have, what sort of accounting procedures you have in place. The quality control narrative is pretty self-explanatory. It will ask what quality control measures you have in place, how you handle multiple projects at the same time without sacrificing quality, and these types of questions. This section will also cover your past performance. And again, your special item number will dictate the type of past performance that GSA is looking for. So you'll have a SIN narrative, and accompanying that will be the corresponding copy of the contract and the statement of work. So if the SIN that you're pursuing is for IT professional services, you may potentially need 2 narratives. If you are pursuing software or advertising, you may only need 1 narrative or document to back up that type of work. And your past performance does not need to be government. If it is, that's great. If it's as a subcontractor, wonderful. If it's with McDonald's or your local church or 7-Eleven as extreme examples, that is fine. Past performance is past performance is past performance. You do need to read the solicitation as well as the additional documents on each of the SIN requirements. There are some outliers that, again, will require additional narratives and not just 1 documentation of past performance. There's also going to be time limitations on these as well. So you can have contracts that are, 10 years old that you're using for your past performance. And then the next component here, the technical section for your GSA proposal, are either 3 CPARs, and you're only going to have CPARs if you have been a direct contractor or a prime contractor with the government. That's your contractor performance assessment report, or references, and those would be 3 questionnaires, and then the questionnaires get submitted to your client. And again, the client can be government. Wonderful if it is. If not, then it can again be McDonald's, 7-Eleven, or your local church. Again, past performance and questionnaires are do not need to be government. If they are, you're not going to get any bonus points, but it will certainly present you in a better light. And all of this information can be found in that solicitation, and the solicitation is on sam.gov. And again, they're on refresh number 20. So some additional notes here on the technical section of your proposal to GSA. If you are providing professional services, you'll need to submit your HR plan, your human resources plan, and what they are looking for there is how and when you compensate your employees, as well as how overtime is paid. And this should be in accordance with federal regulations at time and a half. If you have any labor categories that are Service Contract Act, you want to check the DOL, Department of Labor website, Table 5, and complete the information for SCA. If you are selling products and you are not the manufacturer, then you'll need a letter of supply from the manufacturer. You need to make sure that the products that you're selling are Trade Agreement Act compliant. You can find out the list of the TAA compliant countries on the GSA website as well. You also want to make sure that they are not being produced by Ability One as well. For software companies, you'll also need to submit your end user license agreement, or typically known as your EULA. Again, you always want to read the solicitation because let's say you're listening to this as a recording on YouTube, GSA may be on refresh number 21, and some of these requirements may have changed. Some of the information, you may need to provide additional information, or some of the timelines may have changed. Okay, let me just pause there before we dig into pricing and see if there are any questions on the administrative or technical sections.
So we did have a question. We have a couple of questions actually about, can you explain more about the refreshment version? What does that mean? So it is not like a bidding system. It is like a product catalog with the pricing available all the time. So I guess
Okay.
they're wondering what it
No.
looks like, perhaps.
Yeah, the question's if they want to try to rewrite or rephrase the question, it's not clear. If you're asking about the refresh number, GSA makes updates to the solicitation based on regulations that have been passed. So as you are responding to the solicitation, right now I mentioned GSA is on refresh number 20. It means there have been 20 updates to the requirements since this consolidation of all the schedules has occurred about, let's say, 2 years ago. So let's say tomorrow they're going to publish, and this is just hypothetical, another update. Maybe there's another form that you need to fill out. Then GSA would make that refresh number 21. So that's why I'm saying just be cognizant of dates. And this is, a living, breathing solicitation with a heartbeat. So it will go through changes from now until whenever, if there are federal regulations. So just be cognizant of those and make sure that you're not missing anything that, because a lot of times companies will say, oh, they attend a webinar or they get inspired or decide to pursue the schedule, and they're putting their proposal together, let's say at the beginning of the year in January, then suddenly it's June or July, and they've got everything together and they submit it, but they didn't realize that, oh, GSA has made some updates. They're now on refresh number, 25. And so you miss some important elements, and then so you're going to wait months to hear back from GSA, and only to find out that, hey, you didn't submit all the right documentation. They're going to basically bump your proposal out of the system because it's not compliant. So just, again, be cognizant of all the requirements, just like you would any other solicitation.
All right, had a little trouble with my mute. I think that his question, he hasn't updated, and I'm assuming it's a male, so I apologize for saying they, might be asking about pricing, but the pricing, Jennifer, if I'm correct, is determined when you submit your full application to whatever that refreshed contract number is. So that's set. Is that correct? But you could go up on the pricing, but you can't go down because of the best customer rule.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about pricing next. So I'm going to pause on that question. Anything else that's not pricing related?
He does have a question about relationships, but I think that we can save that one for later. And then, do we have a fixed timeline or window for submission for a particular refresh, or is it open all the time? And then that's the final question.
Okay. Thank you. So again, the GSA schedule is an open and rolling RFP. There is no due date. You just need to make sure that when you're submitting your proposal that you are all of your documents are compliant with the current refresh number. And where do you find that? Again, back on sam.gov, and just click on that follow button. That was, I think, maybe the third or fourth slide in the presentation, and you'll get alerts that GSA has, updated the schedule with now they're on refresh 21, and here's basically what's been updated in that refresh. Okay, and sounds like the other question was related to relationships. And we'll cover a lot of that, more of that towards the end. But let's get into the kind of nitty gritty here. I really prefer to do pricing in person with a whiteboard or a blackboard or something. But let's go ahead and make the most of it here through some visuals that I've got. So as far as your proposal submission, these are what goes into the pricing package part of it. So you'll submit your price list, and your company either has one or the other. You either have a commercial price list, meaning that you have set prices for your products, services, or software, or you have market rates where your pricing fluctuates based on market conditions. The second piece then is your EPA. This is your economic price adjustment, and this is how and your EPA is determined by which price list you use. If you have commercial rates, then your EPA will be based on your commercial price list, which means that at the end of 12 months of having a GSA schedule, you're then allowed to go in and make a contract modification to increase your prices because your commercial prices have also increased. In the event that your company uses market rates for your price list, then your EPA will be based on some market indicator, and that is up to you. Now, I will tell you most of the time this will be based on some average on Department of Labor's Table 5, maybe the past 3 periods. You take the average there and use that as your economic indicator. So maybe the percentage is, let's say, 2.8% or 4.1%, whatever that number is. And you'll use that number, let's just say 4%, which is kind of generous, for how your GSA prices will be increased for the next period of your schedule. So sometimes if you're doing your homework and you come across somebody's GSA schedule online, and you'll see that their prices are built out for 5, 10, 15, or even the full 20 years. It's because their price list was based on market rates, and they negotiated with GSA some economic indicator. Again, most of the time it's through Department of Labor's Table 5, BLS Table 5. If you don't know what that is, Google is your friend. Then with your price list obviously is going to have whatever products you're selling along with the associated price, or the services, meaning you've got labor categories. So you've got program managers, project managers, program managers, systems engineers, graphic designers, whatever it is that you're selling, or you have software along with prices. For each and every line item that you are proposing to GSA, you'll have to indicate and show, or more or less justify, that you have sold these items, these services, this software in the past. And you do that by providing invoices. So for each and every line item, you'll need an invoice to show that you have sold this in the past at that particular price. So if you're selling a program manager level 1 at $100 per hour and a program manager level 2 at $200 an hour, if you have one invoice that has both of those labor categories on it, wonderful. If you have two separate invoices, one invoice is for the program manager level 1 and the other invoice is for the program manager level 2, that's wonderful. These invoices do not need to be government. They can be commercial, they could be nonprofit, they can be, again, McDonald's, your local church, whatever it is. In the event that you do not have invoices, I would say caution, 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 because you're probably a new business. And in my opinion, unless you have relationships in place, strong relationships, and many relationships with many prospects in the government who are telling you to get onto the schedule, you more or less, and pardon me just being frank here, you probably have no business in getting onto the schedule. That's, again, if you don't have invoices. So if you don't have invoices, you can use quote sheets and you can use proposals. However, it's not going to present you in a strong light. It's going to show that you're kind of just starting out. And the schedule is really premature, in my opinion, for companies that are just starting out. Again, 18,000 companies hold GSA schedules. 63%, so more than half, have zero next to their name or what they're doing on GSA. So why spend all of this time, effort, and money to get onto the schedule and box yourself in where you're very limited, versus using some of that time, effort, and money to simply just business development and proposal writing and just your capture process. So again, if you don't have invoices, in lieu of an invoice, you can use quote sheets, you can use proposals, it will be accepted. I just think it doesn't put you in a strong light. And it's probably premature if you're using all quote sheets or all proposals. If you've got 99% of your items or services or software covered by invoices, and there's something new that you guys have added to your price list where you haven't yet generated an invoice, and so for that one line item, you've got a quote sheet or a proposal, that's fine. It's not going to hurt you. So those are kind of just my 2 cents there. In addition to that, the pricing section will also include the GSA PPT, which is the price proposal template. This is found in the solicitation documentation. You also need a statement on why you believe your pricing is fair and reasonable, and that can be done by conducting research, which you should have done upfront before you decide to get onto the schedule. And last but not least, this is part of the e-offer platform, is the CSP, the commercial sales practice. This is where you disclose your pricing policies and discounts. And I'm sure there are some questions, but let me just navigate here to more of the details on pricing. So when you submit your proposal to GSA, they will conduct 2 litmus tests. One is they're going to look at your internal pricing, and then second is they look at external pricing. So this is how they conduct, we'll say, the vetting of your pricing to make sure that it is fair and reasonable. So the internal pricing looks at what are the policies and procedures that your company has in place that are part of your standard policies and practices. And then external, they're looking at the other vendors on GSA. So I've broken this out. So the internal is, again, your standard versus non-standard discounts. And a standard discount would be, let's say you have a price list, and typically on price list, there might be something at the top or something at the bottom in italics that says, 10% discount to nonprofits, 15% discount to state, local, and education, something along those lines. Or all orders over $400,000, we provide a 0.5% discount, or you know, some variation of those. Those are just standard, everyday. All of the sales reps, all of the business development people know this as part of your standard practices. Your accounting folks know this, that, oh, this company, this client is nonprofit, so we put them in at a 10% discount. Non-standard is the sales rep that's out there and they're talking to a big name company. Let's say they're talking to Amazon. And you guys really want to work with Amazon just to list them as a customer on your website. So the sales rep says, hey, Amazon, we're going to give you a, I don't know, 20% discount, something extreme, or it could even be not extreme, but it's just a one-time spot discount that does not occur on a regular basis, and it does not make up a large portion of your overall revenue. So again, a spot discount, a one-time discount, simply to win the business. For companies that are just starting out, let's say you're, 2 or 3 years old, and so maybe a good portion of your business is just that, spot discounts. You've got your price list, but you deviate from that just to get some flagship customers. So that's the first thing. GSA will want to see this. So you have to open the kimono and share this information with GSA. But it's important to make a note here. GSA will negotiate you only on your standard discounts. So if you gave a one-time spot discount of, 30% to Amazon, simply to win the business, to get the flagship client, that's really not in play when you come to negotiations with GSA. The other piece, and this is where you can do some homework, is the external pricing comparison, where GSA will look at other vendors that are on the schedule that are also selling the same software, same products, or the same professional services. So you'll go over to the website bui.gsa.gov, and you'll type in whatever your LCAT is. So I just put a very generic one in here that most companies probably have that are selling services, project manager. So if your project manager has, you look on the left-hand side, these are just screenshots from the buy.gsa.gov website. The minimum education is bachelor's degree, and then minimum experience is 5 years. You'll see that the GSA average is $129. Now, if you're proposing a rate to GSA of, let's say, $150, that is not going to fly. GSA will negotiate you down to the $129. Again, if your project manager also has this bachelor's degree and 5 years of experience. So just, make a very big note in red and highlighted in yellow that says, hey, before I get onto the schedule, I should go onto this website, buy.gsa.gov, and plug in my LCATs to find out, am I going to be negotiated down to a rate that's going to put me out of business? So when GSA negotiates you down to the 129, and that becomes, or 130, if you're lucky, if you get an extra 99 cents here, and that becomes your GSA rate. Your GSA rates, again, are a price ceiling or a not to exceed rate. So now you're on the schedule at 129 or 130, and I don't know, Department of Agriculture wants to place an order for, needs, 100 project managers. Are you going to be able to survive at that 129 rate, but you're probably going to be bidding at, let's say, 125 or 124 just to win the business, because everybody's going to be encouraged to give rates lower than your GSA schedule. Again, if it's a GSA schedule purchase. So just, you'll need to do some math and work with a finance person or a pricing person that can help you understand if this is going to put you out of business because you're not going to have the volume or you're not going to have the margins to basically stay afloat, because you're not going to be able to provide a price higher than your GSA rate. Your GSA rate, again, is only a price ceiling. Now, if you're selling to your local church or McDonald's or Department of Agriculture, not through the schedule, then yes, you can give a rate that's higher than your GSA schedule rate. I've got a slide on that. But let me just pause there and say that you absolutely should do this homework, this research before getting onto the schedule, because the worst thing to happen is to put all of these documents together, submit it, wait months and months and months for GSA to respond to your proposal, get to the price negotiations, and then your project manager, let's say you're profitable at a rate of $150 and they're squeezing you down to 130. as your GSA rate, and then you're bidding at 124, 125, you're probably not going to be able to survive that way. But maybe you can with heavy volume. So do this homework before you decide to get onto the schedule. And I'll just pause there in case there are any questions on pricing, which I'm sure that there are.
All right, Jennifer, we do have a couple of questions on pricing. Hold on just one second. Lost my screen. Okay. So are price lists accepted or allowed on location, address by address specific basis? Especially if that is how the services are offered within the market. So that's one of the questions.
Sure. So let me answer that the way I'm understanding the question. If your company is selling, let's say, some sort of labor or service that administrative service, let's say you've got your um, rates for the northeastern part of the US, which is maybe going to include Washington, D.C., major cities, Philadelphia and New York City, where the rates are probably going to be pretty high. And then you've got your kind of Midwest rates, which are going to be a lot lower than that. Yes, if that's how your pricing is segmented, that's how you would submit it to GSA. A lot of companies make this mistake where they see pricing for a competitor on the schedule, so then they suddenly change their pricing to mimic what the competitor has. Keep your pricing. This is your GSA is going to compare your pricing to your pricing. So don't try to change anything. And if your pricing is segmented by geographic region, because rates are different in Omaha, Nebraska than they are in New York City, then yes, if your pricing is structured that way, then that's how you would present it to GSA.
We have another question. It says, if we are selling products, can we see product pricing before registering with GSA?
Yes,
And I know
so
you kind of just answered that, but.
Yep, and the website for that is going to be gsaadvantage.gov, and you can search products there. Serve and software there as well. Anyone that's selling hourly rates, again, is on the buy.gsa.gov site.
And then the final question that we have for now on pricing is, does GSA focus on pricing mostly, or is it a trade-off based situation?
So 99% of what the GSA is focused on for the GSA schedule is your pricing. This is the biggest component of it. You do not want to mess this up. And you don't want to, timing is everything in life, but particularly here with GSA schedules. If you're a new company that has low rates because you've been a subcontractor for, the last, let's say, 5 or 6 years, because as a subcontractor, most of the time the rates are just dictated to you by the Lockheeds, the Raytheons, or whoever it is you're a sub to. Just keep in mind that you probably want to wait until you've got some higher rates to get onto the schedule, because the rates that you're going to be showing to GSA are going to be low. You're going to get negotiated even lower. And you're kind of going to be in a little bit of a hole, and it's going to take you a while to kind of start raising your prices.
That was our last question on pricing.
Okay. And I've got here just a small section here, kind of a reality check, and then we'll get to conclusions. I've left a lot of time for Q&A, so we may not take the full 2 hours, and pricing can get kind of hairy as far as just understanding the methodology behind it and what GSA is looking for. So happy to go back to any slides as we continue on here. So as I mentioned, most of the companies that hold the schedule do not have any sales through their schedule. So somebody either sold them something that they don't need, or they had the build it and they will come strategy, which is really not a strategy at all. Again, you should be using data to determine, is this contract vehicle right for you? And just be cautious of jumping onto it before you even know if any of your prospects prefer to use the schedule. So a lot of times companies will have just unrealistic expectations like, oh, everybody's got the GSA schedule. I think I need it too. And again, GSA does a great job of marketing themselves, but don't be fooled into thinking that you need this. If you don't have a relationship in place, then you absolutely do not need this. Go get your relationships first. Find out, what do your customers prefer? Is this a vehicle that they use? Are they using their own agency or department vehicle? Do they, is it better for you to form a team with a veteran-owned company or something along those lines? So again, just be smart about your time and effort and energy here. And you can use data to make these decisions. You should be using data to make these decisions. And this market is so unique in that there is public data, meaning free data websites out there that you can conduct research before you, go down this path that may not have any return on your investment. If you don't understand federal contracting, if you don't have invoices, if you just have quotation sheets, again, this is probably premature. That's a very generic statement that I'm making, and there are always going to be exceptions, but you should have an understanding of federal contracting. You should know what the FAR is. If you haven't downloaded the GSA solicitation, you shouldn't even be writing a proposal. You haven't done homework on pricing to determine who are your competitors, who are the other companies selling these same products or similar products, and kind of what prices is GSA at? Are you going to be profitable there? Again, this is all, what goes into the research phase of it, where you should really be spending a good chunk of your time. Once you're on the schedule, again, discounts are encouraged through your schedule, but you can't give lower rates outside of your schedule. And I think my next slide we'll discuss that. So again, discounts, through your schedule, you are encouraged. Outside of your schedule, you cannot give lower rates than your GSA rate. So here's an example, $100, that's either $100 per hour for your labor category, or $100 for your product, or $100 for your software license. So through your schedule on the left-hand side here, you are encouraged to give either that $100 rate to quote $100 or less, preferably less, to anyone that's buying through your schedule. Now, outside of your schedule, even if it's a federal government agency, so if Department of the Air Force comes to you and they want your $100 widget, or they want your labor at $100 per hour, but they're not purchasing through the schedule. They're like, we're going to make this a set aside hub zone purchase, and you're a hub zone. You can give you can quote them a rate of $100 or more. You just cannot go lower. So GSA always needs to be your lowest priced customer. And I'll stop there in case anybody has questions.
Jennifer, I have a question, and I
Sure.
hope I don't confuse anybody, but I had a client that, they were they were primed for a GSA schedule, right? They were doing a lot of work with DLA, and it was suggested to them that they get on schedule. Even after they got on schedule, a lot of their normal buyers would not purchase off their schedule, but they were told by their GSA contracting officer that they could pay like on the back end, they could kind of put those contracts through GSA, so they made sure that they made their $25,000 that they had. Is what I'm saying making sense? I'm trying to, like, the contracts weren't through GSA, but they were able to pay that, and I'm just going to use the word tax, like the GSA tax.
Yeah, the industrial funding fee. No, so a
Yes,
couple
the IFF.
things. Yeah, no, GSA schedule purchases are clearly GSA. The government client will reference your GSA schedule number on their purchase orders. On the contract, it's on the SF 1449. So that sounds very illegal, what's been proposed. And if you're paying the industrial funding fee, the 0.75% on non-GSA schedule sales, that actually is a violation. So you're actually not compliant. You're overpaying the industrial funding fee, which again, in what GSA has these customer assisted visits, they call them CAV, customer assisted visits. It's basically an audit where GSA will check to make sure that you're documenting GSA sales versus non-GSA schedule sales and making sure that you're paying the GSA industrial funding fee, the IFF, the 0.75% on GSA schedule sales only. If companies accidentally pay on non-GSA schedule sales, again, that's a violation. They get dinged for that. And the sales quota is not $25,000 per year. It's they've changed it to just $100,000 at the end of the first 5-year period. So sounds fairly unscrupulous what the contracting officer is suggesting for the
This was
vendor.
This was quite a while ago when I was
Okay.
more in the client work, but they didn't end up doing it because they didn't feel comfortable doing that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Good. Okay, so this visual hopefully should help a little bit. The big takeaway is outside of your schedule, this can still be within the federal government. So as my example was, Department of the Air Force comes to you and they want your services, but they're saying, hey, we're not buying through the schedule. You can give them your GSA kind of base rate or higher. You just can't go lower. Okay, and then the fine print here, we're kind of coming around to the last 40 minutes of the program, and I left a chunk of time for questions, but maybe we'll finish early, I don't know. The fine print. So again, read the solicitation, especially when there are updates to the refresh number. Pricing is absolutely the most crucial piece here that you do not want to mess up. Is there going to be return on the investment that you're making? And even if you're not paying a consulting firm like us or you're doing it yourself, it's still going to be your time and effort. So take the, half a day or so to conduct the research on the GSA websites to find out, is your pricing even going to be profitable? Does your customer prefer to use this contract vehicle? And just use that data to make decisions. On the conclusion side, it's pretty much the 80-20 rule, meaning that 20% of the vendors on GSA schedule are doing 80% of the work. There's a lot of zeros next to the sales figures for most of the companies on the schedule, 80% of them. Without a relationship, this is really just a piece of paper. It's just a fancy logo that you've got on the back of your business card or a link on your website to your GSA pricing. And yes, you can box out some competition, as I mentioned earlier, but the competition will be more fierce. These are companies, again, that like you have been vetted. They've been in the game. They understand it. You're going to have more large businesses that you're up against. So if you've been in federal contracting for a while, and you've got the relationships and you've done that pricing homework, and you have kind of a pricing methodology in place or an LCAT methodology for the professional services firms. And what I mean by that is you've got a project manager level 1, a project manager level 2, and a project manager level 3, and different levels for all of your labor categories so that you're not boxed into just one project manager. And again, I just keep repeating this. Does your customer even prefer the schedule and just using data to make decisions? And, no other market out there aside from other public sectors, state and local or education, have public data that's available to you. So if you're selling to the airline industry, or you're selling to hospitality, or you're selling to hospitals, you're not going to have websites where you can find out who the incumbent was, how many proposals were submitted for the RFP, um, or any of that data, or what their forecast is, or who the point of contact is. So use all of this data. It's out there, it's available to you, and then you'll use it and you can make smarter decisions on how to spend your time effectively and efficiently. And just because you meet the GSA requirements doesn't mean that it's a good decision for you. Um, again, check the pricing. But it also doesn't mean that it's a bad decision. It's going to be specific to your company. You should be able to answer these questions. And that will take you back to that chart that I had, the pie chart of the visuals. So, how big is the federal market for my solution? How much is the government purchasing on, for the last, let's say, 4 fiscal years for my product, service, or software? And I'd even go back maybe to 2019 pre-COVID, just to see. Sometimes COVID, for whatever, depending upon what you're selling, there's going to either be spikes or dips during those kind of COVID contracting years. So just keep that in mind, and maybe, like I said, go back to 2019 and look at the trends. What was set aside, what went through simplified acquisition, what went through other contract vehicles. And this will help you determine, maybe you do qualify for 8A, or maybe you do qualify for HubZone. And either use these to box out the competition, or make yourself more attractive to the buyer. However, you should really be focused on not these kind of check boxes, but you should be focused on merit, and really not the set aside checkbox. Again, make sure you read the solicitation, and just have in your CRM system, whatever it is you're using, are your prospects typically purchasing from the schedule? Just have the conversation with them. Do you guys use the schedule? Is it preferred mechanism for you? And they may say, no, we use our own contract vehicle, or no, whatever. They'll give you an answer. And then just post award, there's a lot of compliance and reporting. There's mass modifications that you'll need to accept. Just documentation, as there is in just basic federal contracting. Just an added layer there with a GSA schedule. So it's not for everybody. I'm not trying to scare anybody. I just want to make sure that you make good decisions, because there's a level of effort to get onto the schedule with the proposal, and then post-award compliance. So use the data, and the most important thing is really just understand the pricing limitations, the increases that you can make, how you should present yourself without being taken advantage of during price negotiations with GSA, and more. And I'll stop here, and we'll use the remainder of time for Q&A, and happy to go back to any slides if that's helpful.
All right, so that is a lot of information this morning, and we do have still some questions. And if you have more questions, please continue to put them in the Q&A portion as I am monitoring that. So our first question that we talked about, and you did talk about relationships. The question was, when you say relationship, are you talking about actual face-to-face relationship? How does that work?
Sure. So relationships can take many forms. Face-to-face will be ideal. You can meet these buyers, influencers, contracting officers, teaming partners at events, conferences, various organizations related to government contracting, NDIA, NCMA, APCEA, CCAF, the list go on and on and on. Your local chamber probably has a government division. If you're in the DC metro area, there's plenty of, most of the chambers here have a big government contracting component to them, just because of the nature of where we're located. Online marketing as well, digital marketing, emails. Do you have content, white papers, blogs, videos showing that you are the best, whatever it is that you're providing? You provide the best janitorial services, or the best IT professional services, or whatever it is that that you're providing, how are you conveying who you are to your partners, prospects, again, influencers, and all the various people.
All right. Next question. But there are additional costs working and dealing with GSA, so we can't offer GSA higher prices than other customers.
Is it a question or a statement? I mean, your GSA rates
It's
again.
kind of a little bit of both, I
Yeah.
think. I think the question is like, could you build in, like, can you pay it back? Essentially, maybe. I'm not sure, but they're trying to weigh the
So again, your GSA rates are a
additional
price
costs.
ceiling or not to exceed. If your current price list shows up 50% higher than GSA averages, this is probably not the right contract vehicle for you. Again, comparing apples to apples. So if you've got a project manager with 10 years of experience and a master's, then make sure that that's what you're searching for on the GSA site to get the rate average. If your person has a clearance or special certification, then yes, that's going to warrant a little bit of a higher price. But again, compare apples to apples and do that homework before you decide to get on.
Our next question is, so our main goal to join GSA to access the big pool of buyers that we don't have relationship, and it will be hard to create these relationships, but you are saying we still need to have relationships. So how can we create that? I think you just answered that with, so I think we're good on that. And also Jennifer will be
Maybe
back
yeah.
with us next month, which is just a few short days from now, doing the federal contractors basic marketing guide, which I'm sure you'll talk a lot about relationships and different ways to get your company in front of those people that matter in the federal contracting world.
Exactly. And I'll make one last statement if I can, Jasmine, is
Absolutely.
maybe folks have heard, if you see something on sam.gov, an opportunity, you're probably too late to the game. And the same thing if you see it on the GSA RFP platform, which is GSA eBuy, you're too late to the game. There's already 9 times out of 10 a relationship that's been in place, that the competitor, the company there has built a relationship with whoever it is at the federal government and said, hey, can we run this through GSA schedule to kind of limit the competition? So as I mentioned, the competition is less, but it's more intense. So you're dealing with serious players. And if you do suddenly see an RFP on the GSA eBuy site or whatever, yeah, you can respond, but again, somebody, if not one, if not 2 or 3 companies have probably helped to shape the solicitation, the requirements, um, and geared it towards something specific to their company. So don't think that, oh, instead of, millions of people being able to see this on sam.gov, only, 376 vendors in my special item number are seeing this. Well, there's probably 3 vendors in that 376 that have done something to shape that opportunity.
Totally understood. And what you're referring to is the contract life cycle. And as you stated, it does start before something hits sam.gov. We strongly encourage our clients and those looking to do work in the federal space to respond to those sources sought notices, RFIs, so that the government can know that you're there, that you exist, and that you sell what you sell. But we do have a few more questions for you. Okay, so our next question is, is there any support or funding to help getting into the GSA schedule, since the process is long and might need consultants to help? I will just, if it's okay with you, Jen, I will just speak to that really quickly. There could potentially be some opportunities if you are a state of Michigan business. Strongly encourage you to contact your local Apex Accelerator to talk a little bit more about a potential grant opportunity for GSA schedule. And I'm not sure if I don't think anything exists nationwide to assist in that in the GSA schedule getting a consultant process that I'm
I mean,
aware of.
no, I mean they've got an 800 number, but it's more for like technical issues. We obviously provide the GSA consulting as a
Mhm.
paid. We're for profit. We've got, I don't know, probably over 50 webinars, videos on GSA schedules, but it's a consulting service that we provide.
Absolutely. And there was another question that kind of dovetails with that, and it was any special rules or support from GSA to small business. GSA, as do all federal agencies, has an Office of Small Business Development Utilization, their OSDBU office, and so they're able to assist small businesses. GSA does offer webinars as well, and as you said, they have a pretty I would say robust um, website that answers a lot of questions and has contact information.
Yeah.
Um, and then another question, in terms of government agencies customers, do they have a benefit of buying through GSA versus doing their own procurement? Or what would make a procurement person prefer GSA versus other contract vehicles or avenues?
Yep. So anytime somebody is using, meaning a government entity is purchasing through the schedule, again, they are paying that 0.75% that gets paid by your customer if you're on the schedule. You absorb that, all of the fee. You basically receive that amount, and then you pull out the 0.75% and pay it back to GSA. So this is, I'll say, more or less why departments and agencies started coming up with their own contract vehicles so that they would not have to pay GSA. But GSA, it's pretty easy to use. There's, you know, 18,000 vendors, 330 different categories. So they more or less cover a little bit of everything. It's just the simplicity of it. Which makes it attractive. It's trusted, it's respected. The government knows that you've been vetted, and GSA does a good job of ensuring that you've got the past performance, that you've done this type of work, you've got good references, your pricing is fair and reasonable. Everything that we just talked about for the last hour and a half. So that's kind of what makes them attractive. And hopefully that answers the question.
I think it does. All right, and we have two more questions.